A virus has turned 99.9% of humanity into intelligent zombies, consuming everything in sight. Francis and Iris Abel are a happy married couple with 2 sons, teenage Joshua and young Lucas. Their life could be described as perfect, but now they're all in danger due to the zombie apocalypse. An unknown virus has wiped out almost all of humanity, and the survivors must hide from intelligent zombies capable of not only communicating with their prey but also deceiving them. Fleeing the city in an old, blood-stained van, the family heads to the countryside, hoping to find refuge in Francis's parents' mansion. Upon arrival, Francis decides to check the house to assess its safety. Armed with a lug wrench, he opens the front door and heads upstairs, inspecting every room. Trembling with fear, he continues moving forward, determined to protect his family and create a secure life for them. In the master bedroom, he finds the body of his father, who chose to end his life due to the infection and the onset of mutation. Taking not only his father's pistol but also his wristwatch, Francis returns to the hallway. Devastated by the death of a loved one, he suddenly hears his mother's voice nearby. She seems to be injured and in need of help, but she has turned into a zombie. Torn in half, she asks for forgiveness, unable to control her primal instincts and hunger. Apologizing, she lunges at Francis to eat him, but he stops her with a single, precise shot to the head. Later, he buries his parents in a field next to a sugarcane plantation. Francis struggles to cope with what has happened, but he buries their bodies without shedding a tear, for his only mission now is to protect his wife and children. Obsessed with this goal, Francis can't sleep, constantly watching the window to warn his family if any zombies are nearby. In the morning, he checks the water station and shares the good news. Not only do they have some food and a roof over their heads, but they also have clean drinking water. Life gradually returns to normal for the family despite external threats, but there's a hidden tension between Francis and Iris that their children notice. The couple hardly speaks to each other, due to a reason that almost tore apart their marriage. Later, Joshua suggests to his father that they check the barn for anything useful. Francis asks Lucas to stay with his mother, to keep an eye on her and call for help if necessary. In the barn, father and son discover a lantern, a chicken cage, and an old radio. At one point, Joshua freezes in horror when he spots the body of a servant who also decided to end his life after turning into a zombie. Francis asks his son to take the keys from the deceased servant's belt. The boy is terrified and moves with extreme caution, but he struggles to complete the task. In his haste, he accidentally drops the body of the man onto himself, frightening him even more as he fears that the infected blood might get into his mouth. Francis watches the scene from a distance, disturbingly indifferent, as if he's not afraid his son could turn into a zombie. At the same time, he shows particular care for his younger son, treating him to sweet sugarcane, which they can use as a dessert. Later, Iris suggests to Francis that they go down to the basement, where she has found a generator capable of powering the house. Francis hesitates to go inside, gripped by a bone-chilling fear due to childhood trauma. As a child, his tyrannical father would regularly beat him and lock him in the basement as punishment. Noticing the drawings on the wall, Iris realizes her husband is uncomfortable and urges him to focus on solving the problem. Francis tries to start the generator but fails, as it is out of fuel. That evening, Iris suggests they look for a more reliable refuge. Many people have reported heading north, where survivor camps and a military-controlled safe zone are located. Joshua supports the idea because his girlfriend left for the north with her family, and he hopes to reunite with her. Francis flatly refuses to leave his parents' house, convinced it is the only refuge they can use. Food supplies are limited, but he promises to find a solution soon. Joshua attempts to turn on the radio in hopes of finding a broadcast from survivors, but his father forbids him from broadcasting. The next morning, Francis and Iris try to calmly discuss their family's issues. The couple had been on the verge of divorce due to betrayal and lies, but now they are united to protect their children. They are ready to put aside past grievances to ensure a chance for a bright and safe future for Joshua and Lucas. After discussing everything, the family decides to head north. On the way, Joshua supports his parents' decision, as his uncle Diego also advised them to go north. When Francis learns that his older brother had visited them just before the apocalypse, he loses trust in his wife, not only because of her lies, but also because she had an affair with his brother, and Joshua is his son. The husband and wife begin to argue, and old resentments cloud Francis's judgment once again. At one point, his distraction almost leads to a car accident. When they reach a checkpoint, Francis suggests turning around and returning to his parents' house. Iris ignores him, believing the barricade can be moved, allowing them to pass. Without thinking about her safety, she goes to the barbed wire fence and tries to cut through it with a machete. The loud noise attracts a soldier who has turned into a zombie. Realizing his wife is in danger, Francis rushes to her and kills the monster pursuing her. The loud noise attracts another zombie on the bridge, which begins to attack the couple. Francis kills this one as well, but there are many more monsters hiding behind the cars. They surround the van with the children, eager to devour them. Shooting is too dangerous because they might hit one of the sons, so Francis draws the zombies' attention to himself. He lets his wife return to the van to retrieve the children and escape. Using agility and cunning, Francis tries to flee from the pursuing monsters. They grab him by the arms and legs, but he manages to run to a safe distance and then blows up the zombies with a grenade. Late that evening, the family returns home and decides not to continue searching for a survivor camp, as it is too dangerous. 2 weeks later, Francis goes back to the checkpoint to return the van. At some point, he realizes that the appearance of the vehicle will make the family want to go north again. Believing that the only safe place is his parents' house, Francis abandons the van and returns home with fuel for the generator. He lies to his wife, claiming that the car broke down and they are stuck here forever. Going down to the basement, Francis sees the ghost of his tyrant father but tries not to think about it. Today, they are having a real celebration, as the working generator brings a bit of civilization back to their home. The family now has a working air conditioner, a record player, and lighting, making their lives better. Late in the evening, Francis decides to watch the video of their wedding. Giving in to the romantic mood, he seduces his wife, and they make love. Meanwhile, Lucas and Joshua decide to look at old childhood photos of their father. The younger brother notices that Joshua looks more like their uncle than his own father. Joshua doesn't suspect that Uncle Diego is his real father, but he remembers how everything changed one day and his parents started arguing, almost getting divorced. The next morning, Francis again suggests to his wife that they start fresh, leaving the past problems and grudges behind. Later, he decides to check the chicken coop and finds an aggressive dog that has dug its way into the pen. He tries to chase the dog away, but it bites him on the hand, which could cause trouble. Iris worries about the possibility of rabies and suggests finding a hospital with medication, but Francis flatly refuses. He is not leaving his parents' house and shows aggression, which frightens his wife. Soon, Joshua manages to catch a radio signal announcing a safe camp with surviving people. The boy shares the news with his parents, but Francis is skeptical about this information. Iris is convinced that the signal covers a small area, meaning the refuge is nearby. Her husband refuses to search for the camp, saying that he is doing enough to protect the family on his own. In the evening, Iris suggests returning to the van to fix it, but once again receives a firm refusal. Francis is convinced that it is better to be a live coward than a dead hero, so they will continue living in his late parents' house. The next morning, Joshua asks his father to let him turn on the generator to charge the radio. The man firmly refuses and suggests his son learn to take responsibility for the family. Determined to raise him into a true protector, Francis orders Joshua to learn how to shoot so he'll be ready to kill when necessary. Heading out into the field, he demands that Joshua hit a glass jar, but the boy can't seem to manage. Under his father's moral pressure and insults, Joshua struggles to control his emotions. On the brink of a breakdown, Joshua finally shatters the jar, calming his father. At the same time, it becomes clear that the gunshots have attracted the attention of zombies hiding in a nearby church. The unlucky souls who turned into monsters are now ready to do anything to feast on human flesh. The family flees and locks themselves inside the house, but they realize that won't save them. By evening, a horde of hungry zombies is gathered in the yard, calling out to the family and sniffing the air before launching an assault on the house. The zombies manage to break down the door, and it seems like the family is doomed to die, but then a mysterious vehicle appears on the farm. The stranger draws the zombies' attention, leading them to chase him as he drives off into the distance. At dawn, the family steps outside to assess the damage. The zombies have shattered the windows, broken the front door, destroyed the chicken coop, and eaten all the chickens, leaving the family without meat or eggs. Realizing their nighttime savior was his brother, Francis heads to the river where they used to fish as kids. Diego explains he's come to rescue them, heading north and offering them to join him. Francis stubbornly refuses. He despises his brother and rejects his help, angry that Diego had been in a relationship with his wife. Francis feels no sympathy for Diego or the fact that his wife and son were killed by zombies. Refusing to accept his brother's help, Francis threatens him with a gun, demanding that he leave them alone. Before he leaves, Diego leaves behind a map that will help them find a survivor's camp. Initially, Francis considers burning it but ultimately decides to keep it just in case. Back home, Francis lies to his wife, telling her that his brother is dead and they have nowhere to run. Preparing for potential zombie attacks, he begins reinforcing the windows and doors with wooden planks so no one can get inside. With each passing day, his obsession with protecting the family grows, edging into madness. Lucas is chasing a fly and, at one point, ends up in the basement. From the window, the boy spots a zombie and gets scared, but Iris reassures him. She notices that the zombies seem to be weakening and may eventually die off. Francis overhears this conversation and decides to prove his wife wrong. He goes hunting, attacking an old and weak zombie, then decapitates it. Covered in zombie blood, Francis returns home and claims that the monsters are still strong and dangerous. He urges his family to stay inside and give up on the idea of finding another shelter, insisting that their house is the only place they are safe. Later, Francis decides to take a shower and forgets about the map Diego left, which Joshua finds. That evening, the family head decides to host a Christmas dinner, even though it's September. He asks his family to pretend to be happy and make a wish in honor of the holiday. Lucas wishes for a bicycle, and Joshua says he'd like to have a map. The revelation of this secret leads to a conflict, during which it comes out that Iris had wanted to leave her husband and children. She had grown tired of the lack of love and understanding in their marriage. She had dreamed of escaping, but the apocalypse forced her to pretend to be part of the family to take care of her sons. Realizing there's nothing left to hide, Francis confesses that Joshua is not his son, and Iris declares her desire to leave the house to hunt and find food. Francis is certain she will abandon them to search for Diego, but once again insists his older brother is dead. Trying to rob the family of their last hope for survival, Francis burns the map. The next morning, Iris tries to apologize to the children for wanting to leave the house. She explains how hard it is to live with someone she doesn't love and asks them not to blame her for what's happening. Meanwhile, Francis heads to the plantation but hears a noise and realizes there's someone nearby. Growing increasingly paranoid, he returns home to lock his family inside the house. He forbids anyone from going outside, convinced that the world outside is filled with angry, hungry zombies. This leads to another conflict between Francis and Joshua, culminating in the father delivering a hard slap to his son. At some point, the conflict is interrupted by a voice from behind the door. A wounded soldier named Corquera has come to seek temporary shelter. He claims to be healthy but was seriously injured in a zombie attack and needs help. Francis is against guests, but Joshua ignores his father and opens the door, allowing the soldier inside. Iris, a former nurse, tends to his wounds and confirms that the soldier is not infected. Francis agrees to let him stay, but only under the condition that Corquera spends the night in the basement. This would allow them to protect themselves in case he turns into a hungry monster. That night, Joshua tells his mother that he's decided to run away. According to Corquera, it was Diego who sent him to this house. Francis' older brother was surrounded by zombies and sacrificed himself to save the others, but Joshua still holds on to the hope that his real father is still alive. In the morning, Francis wakes up again from a nightmare about his tyrannical father. He notices that his wife has let the soldier go since Corquera is alive and not infected, but he doesn't react to this. Soon, the head of the family learns that his eldest son has escaped. This sends Francis into a rage, and he kills the soldier with a hammer, then knocks out his wife. After some time, she wakes up in the basement with Lucas and realizes that her husband has locked them in so they can't escape. Later, Francis spots a dog outside that has bitten him, and he kills it to prepare dinner for his family. He changes into the military uniform of the late Corquera and brings them steak, but Iris and Lucas refuse to eat, no longer trusting him. This sparks another outburst of fury in Francis, making him even more dangerous to those closest to him. Realizing this, Iris tries to make amends with her husband, but only to secretly hide a knife he dropped on the floor. Her husband notices that she's up to something and takes the knife, leaving her and their son locked in the basement. Trying to save herself and Lucas, Iris pries off a board, but her strength runs out. They can't escape the trap, and when she falls, she loses consciousness. That evening, Lucas suggests to his mother that they pretend he's sick to attract Francis' attention. As soon as Francis descends into the basement, Iris attacks him, striking him with a sharp bone, and then locks him inside. Francis shoots a whole magazine into the door before finally losing his sanity completely. Confronted by the image of his tyrannical father, Francis sinks into a psychological trauma from his childhood, unable to distinguish what's real and what is a product of his delusional mind. Meanwhile, Iris and Lucas attempt to escape the house but suddenly encounter Diego, who has transformed into an intelligent zombie. He tells them to run, as hunger and instincts are overpowering, and begins chasing them. Hearing the screams of his wife and son, Francis regains his senses and breaks free from the basement. He saves his family, smashing Diego's head with the rifle butt, but he's too late. Infected Diego has already bitten Lucas. In a desperate attempt to save the boy, Iris decides to amputate his arm. She asks her husband for help, but Francis is paralyzed by the sight of his son suffering and losing his limb due to their collective mistakes. Later, Francis heads to a checkpoint to retrieve a van, only to encounter Joshua. The teenager, seeing his father's incoherent speech and bloodied face, assumes Francis has turned into a zombie. As Francis approaches, Joshua shoots him. Realizing his mistake, Joshua begs for forgiveness, but it's too late. Francis is bleeding out. Before he dies, Francis acknowledges Joshua as his son, entrusting him with the responsibility of protecting the family. Accepting this, Joshua takes the wheel and heads back to the farm to rescue his mother and younger brother. This story vividly illustrates that our inner demons can be far more dangerous than any external monsters. What do you think? Can our future be doomed if we don't confront our past? How do unresolved conflicts and hidden secrets shape the course of our lives? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe.